Welcome on my first step ever. Having completed 125 episodes, we are now heading towards the special edition of My First Step Ever, where I bring to you some really unconventional stories of people who have pushed beyond their limits, created their own path, which no one really knew of, and they did that with so much of conviction, really diving deep inside them and bringing out the human power possible only once you really believe in yourself. With all the ups and downs and all the lows and all the highs, I would like to welcome our very amazing guest speaker today, Shahna Smith. Hi, Shahna. Welcome on my first step ever.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I think when you spell it out like that, it sounds like an overnight success, but there was certainly a lot of hustle to get to where we are today. So I am originally from Broken Hill, so a small town country girl, and sadly my mum was battling bowel cancer at the age of when I was 16. At that point, I did know I was into makeup, beauty, that was kind of my thing. Didn't know I'd have a brand one day, but I did dream of it. So I sort of said to my mum, she was in the hospital, I really want you to name the brand. I gave her a little iPad, and soon enough, we had Amplified Beauty. Sadly, she passed away not long after. So, 16 years of age, the way I weighed it up and my mindset at the time was very much, well, do I need money or do I need to further my education to get to where I want to go? And the answer was money, especially at that age, and, having to take phone bills all of a sudden or house payments and things that, a 16-year-old doesn't normally think about. So, for me, that was my first step of getting my first full-time job, and then 3 more after that. So I was working a lot to save and get to where I wanted to go. Shortly after, I ended up in Melbourne, and put myself through makeup school, and that really taught me all of the elements of makeup and sort of the more theory side. But I really find for anyone that wants to be a makeup artist, it's kind of up to you what you do with that. And I think throwing yourself in the deep end is the best way. So I ended up getting a job at Sephora, and that is where I really unleash my skills, product knowledge, more client personnel of, what frustrates them, what don't they like, what's trending, how does it work. Yeah, and all of that time I was kind of jotting things down on the side to eventually bring Amplify Beauty to life. So I think it was an 8-year journey with all of that and building my own makeup artistry business on the side. And eventually we finally launched Amplified Beauty Australia. So it really was a long journey. It still is a long journey. I think business is one of those things that's never a straight line. It's like up and down continuously. So, but yeah, that's a little bit of my story and how we started. And as mum was such an important part of this and the drive of starting it, we actually named one of the lipsticks after my mum, called the Tracy, and 10% of that goes to Youth Off the Streets charity.
Wow, lovely, Shahna. Lovely for the way I think you have carved your life out of the entire time, how you kind of dealt with the situation and what you made out of it. It is very challenging to say, kind of manage in this situation, let alone if I can, say that I understand a situation. No, I don't. I think it's very difficult to be in that space. And what is very beautiful is that you kept going, and I'm quite sure that it was the most challenging phase for you to kind of do the transition. What is also interesting is how you kept hustling while you were learning on the go and earning. You also started kind of your own side hustle, which has now bloomed into Amplified Beauty. So I like to kind of understand over here, if I can kind of pause for 2 minutes and kind of go back to the time when you did really, make that tough decision of, no, I want to go ahead and start doing what I want to, because obviously have to pay the bills. But you kind of, tapped into those few inner voice, I would say, the inner voice that you had, and maybe this is the beauty space that I want to be in. How did that process take place for you? How did you recognize your inner voice and, started making that big move for yourself?
Honestly, I was always quite driven from a younger age. Like I always knew what I wanted to do. There was little perks. I think before mum got sick and she was like, "Are you sure you want to do beauty? Are you sure you're going to be able to make the money that you want?" You know, a lot of our parents, I'm sure, have all said similar things with similar roles because it wasn't as popular at the time. And don't get me wrong, I looked into being a lawyer and things like that, and I was really good at that. And there's still things that I can now bring that into business, but it didn't feel quite as natural to me. So for me, it was like a no brainer. Why not do what I love, what feels natural and pays the bills at the same time? I never really looked at it like, how long is this going to take me? I think if I did, I never would have done it. I'd never thought it would take 8 years, but it flew by, and the amount of knowledge you need and you know the resilience that you build from that, you can then kind of I guess transfer into your business skills. So for me it was a no-brainer, and just doing what I love. Leaving school was just the decision of knowing that I needed to survive and kind of get on my own feet and be quite independent rather than further my education, whereas it was just going to put me behind a year. So that was kind of how I made those decisions. But I really didn't think that much into it at that time. And I think that's the best part of being so young. You're naive to a like good point. And I really used that as a tool of just figuring it out as I went.
Interesting. So, Shana, like when you were kind of developing those skills, when you were on the go, on the field, in those, 7, 8 years, as you mentioned, before Amplified became what it is, because I think the way it is gaining momentum, Amplified, is all to do with the values and the principles that you have put behind it, your team has put behind it. And I think it must have stemmed and, been nurtured throughout a couple of years before that. Are you able to take us through that process of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing, when I first initially went for a business loan, which is Indigenous Business Australia, I think they were quite shocked. I had a like folder like this thick, and I was like, here's all my knowledge and research from the last 5 years. And I really think that made them take a step back and say, let's get your business mentor, make sure you're on the right track, blah, blah, blah. And that was when I first really unlocked what I needed in the business and as a brand as a whole. And it was the fact that they wanted me to start with 3 shades because it was more cost effective, as a startup business. And I remember sitting there and probably to the mentor's disappointment, but I was like, no, I'd rather not start a brand. What's the point? There's no inclusivity, there's no diversity, not everyone's going to be able to wear it. And I really, as a makeup artist, wanted a product for everyone to love, not just a few of us. So, yeah, I really wanted to fill those gaps. So, my kind of inclusive diverse values came from that sort of disagreement with the mentors of, no, well, I need 8 at least to get 3 nudes, at a minimum, to make sure we tailor for all skin colors. Because at the time, Fenty Beauty wasn't even out yet when I was building this. It was not even,
Wow.
yeah, so it was quite early on. And back then, if you remember, we didn't have a lot. We would mix
Yeah.
artists like things in our kit to make skin colors. So yeah, that was really important. And that was where I sort of started becoming more aware as myself. Well, that's actually something I really need in my brand and to look for in the future. And something I heavily put in my business plan and started building that value. The second one was female empowerment. And it's funny because if you look at when we first started, our first campaign had a male in there because I really wanted to be for everyone and make males feel included as well. However, we've since taken that back because we just want to focus on female empowerment. And the way we do that's probably a little bit more unique. You normally see brands take off, then go to schools and do these speeches. And I said, well, how are we going to be transparent and do that straight away? Let's start doing it now. I've
Amazing.
still got a story. Let's do it straight away. So instantly from launching, yeah, I was going around South Australian schools and, teaching young kids my story because although I wasn't, on the Forbes list yet, I still had a story to tell of how we built and got it where it was. So, yeah, it was about really unlocking that and using that to assist others as we grew. And that built a community for us as well and really paid off.
Yes, that sounds very much like, where the seeds or maybe the foundation kind of, laid for Amplified Beauty. And I think now the scale of doing the same things and even kind of a better things are kind of laid from this situation or maybe this phase, I feel. I like to kind of touch upon a few things that you mentioned over here, that you started going to the schools early on and teaching the girls, how to kind of use the beauty products. What was, if something really stuck to you, through that exercise that the team went through, if that something really helped you see through a different perspective in that entire situation, and how did you incorporate that in your business for betterment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way I looked at it was I seen a lot of brands wait till they're successful, a lot of founders and CEOs wait till they're successful to then, go do their speeches and whatnot. And I thought, why? Why not be relatable? Why not be authentic on where you are now when you're starting? And then have those kids jump on your journey with you so then they're empowered along the way. So that was sort of where I sparked that light bulb moment. And I've also found as I looked further, a lot of schools, and this is no disrespect to them, but a lot of AFL players go to schools, right? A lot of sports players, a lot of basketball players, and things like that. And it's really not for everyone. It's not for the girls. It's not for the people that don't like sport. It's not for everyone. So I really wanted to go there and show something real. Not that AFL is not real, but something that's like, well, I had every reason to give up, and here I am, and I'm still working, and you guys can do it too. And something that really stood out to me from doing that was this one school in Adelaide, and this little girl. It was quite funny. I was early into this, so it was probably maybe a year in, and they asked for my autograph afterwards, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, "No, I'm ask me again in 10 years, guys. Like, we're not there yet." So what I did instead is I was like, give me a piece of paper each, and I, from my heart, made up on the spot a quote. I kind of had to judge a book by its cover, which I guess we shouldn't, but I wrote down a quote for every individual child in that hall. Um, and one little girl had a
Wow.
walker. Yeah, she had a walker, and I was like, well, it's quite obvious she's got a physical disability. She's going to have obstacles instantly. So I remember writing to her, your obstacles are going to be inevitable, but just keep pushing. And the thing that stood out for me from that is I didn't realize the power I was giving. And it took a teacher to give me a call and send me a photo and say, this child went through something at home and she had your note and sat with it and was like, she told me to keep going, I'm going to keep going. And it got her through something, well outside of what I was even talking about. So that was when I realized
Wow.
the power of, I guess, like my responsibility to those children and as females. So yeah, to start now, why wait till you're big and successful when they can't even relate to you? So yeah, that was a big standout moment for me, and that pushed me to keep doing it even more.
This is incredible, Shana. Thank you so much for sharing that incident with that situation with us. It also shows your creative thinking and backed by a purpose, and that was so genuine, so real. And how interesting is that it really touched the little girl's
Mm.
mindset, their lives at that point in time. And it was such a valuable thing that you did for them. I would say very, very heart touching and heartwarming, I would say that. And I think that is what makes an entrepreneur very different from a lot of other people in the league, because you are there for a purpose. You are working towards your brand, but with the heart attached to it, and the meaning, and it is being shown in the different ways that you have been working, not just as a company but also as a brand, even as an individual. So I want to kind of touch upon, we will come to Amplified Beauty Australia. I would like to know a little bit more about why it came into being, how it came into being, and what it is. But before that, I'd like to kind of ask one quick question to you. Whenever we are, on the path of doing something greater than what anyone has thought of, or bigger than that what we want to do, there are a lot of negative comments. Either it could be our own inner voice as well, or also, people around us. Did you have to ever face anything of that sort? If yes, how did you overcome that?
All the time. I still get it now, and I think the biggest thing when you have a vision is to remember it's your vision. No one else can see what you can see in your mind, and you need to just stay tunnel vision on that. It's so easy to step. I'm guilty of this even still to this day. I find that if the people around me aren't backing what I'm saying, I can second guess, well, is it that great, or is my vision just that big? They can't see it until I do it. And what I find is it is a lonely journey. Business, entrepreneurship, anything like that. I had a lot of friends that I'd lost, not in a negative manner, but they've just stepped back because they didn't understand my schedule. They didn't understand I was traveling. They didn't, it was a one-way street, or I noticed certain friends didn't buy the product and didn't support it. And just your values start to shift as an individual, not just as your business. So definitely it's going to happen. It's inevitable that people are going to say, how do you even start a beauty brand? And the biggest thing I can take from that is it's not up to us to educate them, that just go and do it. And the more you talk about things, probably the more people will try and stop you. But it's not even coming from a place of not understanding. Sometimes people don't want you to get above them either. So I think just keeping that in mind and just keep your vision to yourself and just keep tunnel vision and go and do it anyway.
That is so true. That and all that, I think that resonates with me completely, and I can relate to a lot of things. So, our listeners out there who are listening to us today, the youngsters or anyone in their life stage where they are kind of, wanting to do something, they have a greater vision than what they think that they can achieve. I think you definitely can. And I think there are a lot of voices around you, you're really near and dear ones as well. Not everyone can understand you the way you understand yourself and your dreams. As Shahana very rightly put, it is your vision, not anyone else can actually see it. If you really believe in it, you will get that confidence to go ahead. And if you do not have that confidence, it means that either that's not what is something that you really desire, or maybe you really need to kind of work around things to make it believe that this is what something that you really want. You're just fearing a lot about it. So thank you, Shana, for taking us through that, from your early life to your the working time in your early 20s, in your mid 20s, and now that you have this amazing brand that is actually achieving so much out there in the world. For a couple of our listeners who might not be aware of Amplified Beauty in Australia, I'm sure a lot of them are out there are already, but are you able to take us through that? What is Amplified Beauty Australia and why does it exist?
Yes, absolutely. So, obviously, touching on the story, that was a huge part of my why. Um, I was always into beauty, so that was just kind of the natural thing, and this was just the goal I wanted. Some people have a goal, they just want to be a makeup artist, maybe they want to be a celebrity makeup artist. I wanted a brand, but I wanted to do it the long way by going through becoming a makeup artist, finding out the frustrations and those gaps that may have been in the industry. So, I definitely probably did it the longest and hardest way possible, but I'm glad I did because I have such a bigger understanding. The product range that we started with was very intentional. We started with lipsticks. And again, had I not been a makeup artist, maybe we wouldn't have. Maybe we would have started with something like foundation. And the reason we didn't is because I've learned this again as an artist, otherwise I wouldn't have known. But foundation is very personal. It is a very personal product. It is a very hard product to actually create. Shades you need a lot of, so then the cost of things are larger. So there was a lot of thought put into why we started with lipstick. And for me, based on clients that I had, lipstick was fun. It was fun. It was easy to try a new one. It wasn't scary. It's something that people can chop and change and really fall in love with the brand. And then we can educate our values, who we are, what are we about. Then we can move up to the personal product. So it was very, very intentional of being lipstick. So we are a liquid to matte lipstick brand. We're cruelty free, Australia made, vegan, all of those boxes. And yeah, that was another value. I wanted to be Australian made, especially after COVID. I find that Australia had a massive hit. So that was another value that may have cost me more, but it was really important to me to, um, assist with Australia thriving. So that was another thing. And being luxury was the aesthetic choice. So designing the packaging a certain way and, as you know, it's one of the most competitive industries I chose to come into.
Yes,
Where
for
those
sure.
yeah, and that's where those outside voices came into, like, how the hell are you going to do that? That's ridiculous. There's so many brands. So it's just a matter of thinking, well, what can I do then? What can I do differently? How can we get someone walking past Fenty and go over to AB? And that was where we designed, I'm not sure if you've seen our magnet devices. So we had a mechanical engineer, and our products
Right.
literally float in the air and levitate. And then you can virtually try them on with iPads. And what, 2, 3 years ago, that was a lot less. You didn't see that much back then, so that was really good. Of just
Innovation.
taking that step of, well, what do you mean if I can't? What if I can? And how can I do it? I think just shifting that mindset.
This is incredible. I mean, this is such a long journey that you have taken. As you rightly mentioned, you definitely are in one of the most competitive environments, no doubt over there. And it's so incredible to understand your thought process. I think for our listeners, if you did hear what Shana just really said, that yes, it is something that is difficult, but how can we do it differently? And they did bring that thing up in a way. Innovation is what really got them through, cut through the noise over there. And this is amazing, Shana. I also know that Amplified Beauty is doing really well in terms of scaling up and expanding the business. And that's another part of the business that is very challenging. You go up, you make your name, but to sustain and expand is another challenge. So if are you able to kind of take us through maybe those maybe top three learnings or those top three enablers which has helped you kind of scale Amplified Beauty all over the world?
Yeah, it's funny because I wrote this business plan. I was like, cool, we're going to get to this and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And we got to certain things and they happened so fast. And I was like, it was so easy for me to get distracted and maybe pulled from that plan. And I'm not sure how many of your listeners are familiar with my name, but I actually took on an editor role for 4 months of a magazine that had nothing to do with my goal and nowhere near where I wanted to be. But
Wow.
I had I had thoughts at the time that the owners were going to invest in Amplify Beauty to assist us going overseas. So there was a lot of other, you know, outside reasons I done that. But I think the biggest learning curve from that was I stepped away from my values. I've never wanted to be an editor in my life. I stepped away from my community and my audience and what I truly believed in, because then I took a lot of hours into someone else's business that I otherwise took from Amplify Beauty, essentially. So, one biggest learning lesson to date is to stay focused on your brand. Try not to get too, I guess, blurry in your vision, because it does. You've got your pen and paper and you've got your plan, but so many things are going to pop up. So many things, and it's so easy for you to just kind of get pulled on the wrong path. So that, to me, it's funny you asked. It's probably where we're currently at of those learnings. But it's been 2 months or so since I've left that role, and the business is thriving again. And I've returned to my audience and my, community, and giving them back a piece of me. So if I can, yeah, tell anyone anything, it's stay within your values and stay focused on what you want, and try not to steer away too much. Scaling the business is another thing. You get to the point, we made a lot of noise in the press. We got the Forbes Panelist, we got the Leadership Award, and whilst there are a lot of highs, that can actually cause a lot of like, what's the word for it? Imposter syndrome, because it's like, well, what do I do now? We did it. Now what? And then
Yeah.
there's like that media pressure. So I think surrounding yourself with people that can support that. What I did from there is I found a business advisor that was that next level up, that can be like, okay, yes, you've done this, now where can we get to this? And just help my mind stay on track. So I've got an amazing business advisor at the moment to really look at things at that new level, and to take the business to the next level.
That's great. And thank you so much for sharing that pearls of wisdom with us, Shana, taking us through your journey. And it is in such a short span of time, that you have really shown us that what someone can do if they really believe in themselves and actually make an action plan and execute it. And this podcast is all about taking the steps that you wanted towards your goal, but backed by your reasons and why, and never giving up. And we see that in your journey from the very beginning. Your purpose was so strong. You were so at it from the beginning. Like if you had to take a decision, you took that and you stuck to it. You did experiment a bit, but you were always clear with what you wanted to do, even if at some point of time you were not. But when the clarity did come, you made sure that you had a plan and you executed. And it's also interesting to see that you did not stop there. You did expand and you got people on board, as you said, that get the right resources on board when it is required, because your energy should be focused in the place where you can do your best. That is amazing. So thank you so much, Shana, for being on my first step ever. There's lots that I would like to chat about, but before we take your leave today, I like to request all my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they really resonate with.
Good question. Honestly, I think we'll recap on everything that we said. So essentially, figure out what you love so it doesn't feel like you're working. get everyone to pay you for it. And then really nurture that and build a community as you grow. I think don't wait till you're successful to build that and then, start posting and network then. I think do it in the early stages so that you're a lot more authentic and you'll stand out.
This is lovely. And if you heard that right, my listeners, that had a very deep message, what Shana just mentioned, that when you start off young, you're very raw, authentic, and you're quite unfiltered and you're quite untouched in regards to what the world has to say and what the world has to do to you. And as you grow, a lot of things starts growing on you, and it takes a lot of time to, kind of keep being you. So start early and I think start small if you really do not know where to go, and keep moving towards your goal and always believe in yourself. So thank you so much, Shana, for being on my first step ever.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.